for some reason January is a bad month for me. So just normal, and I know it is, but I just my emotions and stuff get a little edgy, so I get cranky faster.
Okay.
But that's.
We can, I'm sure we'll get onto that in a bit more detail, but what do you remember about going to boot camp? Did you have expectations?
Well, I knew it would be tough, and it was. I took it better than most, even though we were kids. I mean, we were 17, 18 years old. I think that being from a military family and traveling around and adapting fast made it easier for me to be away from home. And from the time I was 13 till I went in the Marine Corps, I pretty much was not at home very much anyway. I was out on the streets most of the time. And the whole family kind of was that way. As soon as they could get out of the house, they got out of the house, as fast as they could. So, but I adapted to boot camp, I think, fairly well, and the physical part of it was lucky for me, not too much. I think my way of life, fighting all the time, kept me in pretty good shape, I guess. So the training, other than the discipline part of it, and I went into the Marine Corps with an attitude that somebody owed me something, and I was going to get it one way or the other, and came out of the Marine Corps with the idea that nobody owes me anything, and if I don't get it myself, it's not going to be done. So it changed me quite a bit, and I never really knew the age difference, the age part of it, until later in life. I think I looked at pictures of me when I went to Vietnam, and I was just a kid. I mean, I had teenage acne, and I'd never shaved before, and just but the Marine Corps, through boot camp and advanced infantry training and stuff, gave me a lot of I'm trying to think of the word. The more I think of it, I'll farther go. But discipline. It gave me a lot of discipline that I didn't have before, and I owe them that. I think without the Marine Corps, I probably would have ended up in jail or prison or something. So they did that for me. But then I turned 18 June the 16th, and June the 26th I was in Vietnam. And that November, I was the youngest Marine in Vietnam. The Marine Corps birthday. And they took me out of the field and brought me back to Da Nang and put new fatigues on me, and some guy that looked like an old boot. He was a first sergeant, and the guy was ancient, but tough. The whole time we were there getting a picture taken, eating cake. We were in a trailer, and the whole time we were there, he was complaining, "There's supposed to be a war. We're sitting here eating cake." And, so he was just And as soon as he was done, he was out. He just, you know, but so that was an interesting time of my life.
What did you know much about the Vietnam War? Did you know what was going on? Were you aware of?
Well, you know, I knew mainly that we were there. I think I fought and had pride in our country, but I really fought for the guy next to me more than anything else. I think I was there for my country, but did the fighting for the guy next to me. There's a brotherhood. You get to show. You don't. It's just not. You know, I'll do anything for you. And next time you go out, you have the chance to do anything for them. It's easily. You're easily put to test. Instead of saying I'll do anything for you, and you know that's the last time you see him. You know. And when you're put in charge, especially, and you turn around and say, you know, I won't leave you there, you know, then you're held to your word. You got another 6 guys that see you, you know, if you leave somebody out there, you just told them you wouldn't, you know, so you're held to that. You know, so you didn't say things lightly, and there was times that I was helped when it was hard to accept, I guess, that somebody would come and help you in that situation. But they did, and they also were kids, you know, which you don't see when it's happening, when everything's going on. You don't really look at everybody and say they're kids, but a bunch of old men scattered in, you know. You don't look at that. You look at the next guy as being a man just like you are, you know. But then afterwards, you take a look at a picture of when that was. When I first went in to Vietnam, we went in a big long line, like an assembly line, and there was this table set up, long table, and there was people on the other side, and there was, I guess, maybe 15, 20 people, and they all had different forms in front of them, and you started at one end, and you went to the other end, and they would ask your name, you know, your rank, your home, what each station had something else that they needed to ask you, you know, who your next of kin was, it's who to call. And I remember thinking when I was going through that, I remember thinking, why won't anybody look at me? No one would look. Everybody had their head down, filling out their paper, and no one seemed to care. You know, when they looked at you and didn't look at you, they didn't want to put a face. I realized later that they didn't want to put a face to the body, to the name that was on your records. They didn't, you know, 'cause all these kids were being paraded through this, you know, and I saw a picture of myself at that time in a helmet, and I looked like I was a teenager playing war, you know, and I realized that they didn't want to look at you because a lot of you weren't coming home, and they knew that, you know. made made a big impression on my life later. When it's all happening, it really just seems surreal. I mean, when you become a Marine and you finish the training and all of that, you're proud to be part of that organization. I mean, and the training's a little bit different now than it used to be. I remember when the training in boot camp, the drill sergeant was walking in and out of the ranks, and he was saying, "We can't put our hands on you, can't swear, can't, and you know, we can't mistreat you, and and on and on." And he's walking in and out all the guys, and then he stopped, said, we're not allowed to put our hands on you for disciplinary reasons. And he stopped in front of one of the biggest guys out there, knocked him right on his rear end, boom. And everybody just kind of, their eyes got as big as soda pop bottles. And he said, "But we don't listen to rules around here very much." So, but it was a learning curve that actually I needed, and I think a lot of the young guys that did need. I've been told I have a little bit of a southern accent for some reason. I picked that up in the Marine Corps because a lot of the guys I was with was from the South, and if I'm around somebody from Texas or whatever, it takes me a few minutes and I'm y'all, just as southern as they are.
So what did you do for AIT? And I assume you had an MOS
going out 351 anti-tank, the bazooka, machine gun bazooka, 106 recordless rifle, and explosives. But that just meant that you had a number and they handed you a rifle and you were all 0311. So you're all infantry. So that's my main job was to be the fighting part of everything. In Vietnam, I spent 2 tours there. Actually 28 months altogether. And our job was to take care of, I was assigned to MACV security. So we handled the security for the MACV compounds, and the MACV advisors taught the ARBANs how to be security. So we were their security, and they taught the ARBANs how to be security. So, which really never made much sense to me, but somewhere along the line, somebody thought it was a good idea. So, that was our main purpose there, was to do security for MACV, and do their convoys, their patrols, and things like that. But mainly security for the compound.
And did you go out there with people from basic and advanced training, or did you just go out as an individual?
Oh, you get into everything's broke down to squads, platoons, companies, and when you go into AIT, you're with another company, or you're assigned in a group. So it's a lot of physical training, but then you also train on the weapons, how to use them, how to take them apart, how to put them together, how to clean them, and whatnot. also a lot of physical running, and you ran everywhere you went. So you were constantly in training all the time, and you trained for combat. You used popped up targets for live ammo and stuff, and that was the whole. To the point that you wonder, why am I doing this again? We just did this last week. It's over and over and over and over and over. And then the first firefights you get into in Vietnam, you realize why, because you automatically do what you're supposed to do, and after it's done, then you throw up. Your nerves get to you then. But during the time that it's happening, you're not paying much attention. You're paying all the attention to it. I guess not much attention is not the right way to say that. You're paying all of your focus goes on the fight, and it never occurs to you that you might get hurt. It just occurs to you, when this happens, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm supposed to do it. And it's during your training, it's done over and over and over and over and over again until you use it. You don't realize that it makes sense to train that way. But for another, 8 weeks, I think. 8 to 12 weeks, I can't remember exactly, was all AIT. And then my personal situation, I went to AIT, then I went straight from AIT to survival training, and from survival training to Vietnam. So.
How long before you shipped out did you know that you were going to Vietnam?
I checked into my, had 30 days leave, checked into my unit, spent maybe 2 weeks at the unit, and they called me in the office and said I was going to Vietnam. I had volunteered to do that. I figured if I was going to train to do the same stuff over and over, I might as well do it. So I volunteered, and they sent me right away. And then I went to survival school. Well, they say survival school, but it's survival training. It's training in jungle warfare and stuff.
Where was that training?
That was in Camp Pendleton. Almost everything was in the Southern California. Camp Pendleton, MCRD, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego. It was all in that one area. Surprisingly, for some reason, I came from California and I trained in California. And it was usually when you came from California, you trained at Camp Lejeune, and when you were around the Lejeune area, you trained in California. For some reason, I was left where I was. I guess they weren't worried about me running away or anything, so we did have a few people that did. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They decided they didn't want to be Marines. But I usually just got them into a couple weeks in CC, corrective custody. And they have it even harder. They had it even harder. Everywhere they ran, they carried a sledgehammer. They took a sand pile and moved it from one area to another area with hand shovels and buckets. Then after they got it to that area, they turned around and moved it all back. Pretty soon they got, the idea of taking orders, or they got put out. So.
And you said you had 30 days leave?
Yeah, I went 30 days leave. And in that in that 30 days of leave, you realize how much you really change. You seem, to yourself, you seem like you're the same kid that left and went in the Marine Corps. But then when you come home, you realize that you're too old for most of your friends. And you're too young for the people that you relate with, as far as what to do. It puts you in a real awkward position. You don't have fun with your friends because they do children's stuff. You don't have fun with the older people because the older people don't want you around because you're so young, you know. So you kind of, in 30 days, you're ready to go back to somebody you can relate with, you know, that understands the nomenclature of the firearms that you're playing with, you know. It makes for interesting growing up, interesting conversation now, but then it wasn't. It was just a real confusing time for people, I think. Not just me, but the friends that I had. Funny enough, I really didn't have very many friends. That I know. I know a lot of guys that went to Vietnam that kept all their friends, that the guys they served with. And I don't even remember names. I remember faces, and most names were nicknames and stuff. Short last name. I was known as Mish instead of Mishler. But I don't remember everybody's name except for Bob, the one guy that I was in the tower with in Hawaii. We were in the same unit and went through the same fight together. What else?
Should we talk about going over to Vietnam and sort of your first impressions and sort of the expectations that you had of it?
I think the thing that stands out the most to me was when I was going over, and we flew over on commercial jets, and when I was going over and getting ready to go, and I was on 30 days leave at home before I went again, and I'd spent a lot of time during that 30 days in the trip to Vietnam, the first time wondering, what would I do? Would I be able to pull the trigger on somebody? I mean, it's okay to hit pop-up targets, but when it's a human being, I wasn't sure if I would have what it took to do that. Would I hesitate? And I spent a lot of time thinking of that when I had time for idle thought. A lot of that thought was could I do what I was being sent there to do? And it turned out that I could quite easily, but like I said, it was trained into you where you do it first and think afterwards. I don't remember names, but I remember faces and situations, and those will never go away. So, but I also remember when we landed in country, how hot it was. and Marines went to Okinawa first to do the processing of paperwork that the other people didn't do from the States. So to make sure they had everything ready for you to come home with a box, I guess. So,
Was did you were obviously it being Japan? Did you remember anything? Was any of it familiar from having lived there when you were?
Well, Okinawa was different than Okinawa was more of a military island, and we were kind of held in a on a base situation. We weren't allowed to go out very much. We took, I think, about 5 days, and we were processing the whole time. And so all you did was do that, and when you got to Okinawa, you could drink regardless of what age you were. So we did a lot of that. I remember, and everybody was really rowdy because you had the guys going to Vietnam and the guys coming back from Vietnam. And the guys coming back from Vietnam wanted to show the guys that were going to Vietnam how much different they were than it was all in good, clean fun. So, but they had all the chairs and tables were bolted down to the floor. There was no glass anywhere. The band was behind a chicken wire fence because people would throw things, and luckily they didn't have any glass. There was plastic glasses and stuff that they would throw. And it was always being closed down because of some riot that happened there. Everybody was just so wound up. You were either going or coming back. So, I remember the few times that we did get off base, the driving was crazy. People honk. That means you're coming to an intersection. When you're all crammed, as many as you can cram in one of these little taxi cabs. And then you'd hear your driver honk, and then you'd hear somebody else honk, and you know that both of them weren't going to stop at the intersection. So it doesn't matter who got there first. But that's about all I can tell you about Okinawa. In Japan, we lived on the economy in Japan, so we were actually with the general population. And I remember as a kid, it was really different. We celebrated a lot of the festivals that they had there, and participated in a lot of them that had children pulling things and stuff like that, like the big ropes. You'd have all the children would be pulling on this big statue thing or whatever. And they'd pull to a certain area, and then all the orange drink and everything was free to the kids. And it was fun. There was the drums and all that stuff. It was really interesting. My sister Vicky was one of the first people to go trick-or-treating in Japan. She wasn't supposed to get on the bus, but she did. She went home, and so she decided she was going trick-or-treating anyway. So she put on her costume and went trick-or-treating, and somehow she managed to make everybody understand that they were supposed to give her stuff. So they gave her all kinds of rice cakes and everything.
How old were you when you were over there?
I came back. I was 8, so I was 6 years old, I guess. We spent 2 years there. So.
Was there anything that you missed when you went back to the US from when you were living there?
Financially, we were well off in Japan at the time. We had a housekeeper, things like that. When we came back to the U.S., we were at the low end of everything. and my mom got divorced, and you know, so it was when we came back, we were at a different social level, and I think that affected a lot of things, but nothing earth shattering.
It's interesting. So landing in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
You landed where?
In Da Nang, on a Continental airline. I felt sorry for the stewardess, because being in a small flying tube with 100 or so oversexed Marines, they were kids. They went through a lot. You had to hand it to them that they didn't kill one of them, or more. So they went through a lot. I remember that on the air, on the flight home, or on the flight there. They were pretty rowdy with the stewardess. So, but some of the stewardess were pretty tough too. So more than one guy got smacked. I know that. Flying over there wasn't much. Landing was after we landed, it was different. Everybody got off the plane and got into a formation, and I remember the heat mostly. I mean, it was all either packed dirt or asphalt where the planes landed and stuff, and it was just with the sun beating off of those, it was just scorching hot. I mean, it was just, you could feel it when you breathed in, and you got used to it eventually. You just got used to sweating to the point that you just didn't pay any attention to it. Things like deodorant and stuff weren't used because you couldn't go through the jungles and wear, Old Spice aftershave. Be like saying, I'm here. But I remember they called out names, and they would call out names and not serial numbers, but we had 2248-510 was my military number. Then later they started using your Social Security. So they would call out your number, and they would have them fall out into a different formation, and they would be sent to. They would say you're going to First Marines, whatever area you were going to, and then they would pile you on trucks and either take you to a place where another military transport would pack all your stuff up, and you'd fly on the C-130 somewhere in country and stuff. And I remember I went to 3rd Marines, and 3rd MP Battalion, which I thought was pretty good, which ended up being fairly good for, I saw action, but I didn't see as much as a lot of guys did. I got my Purple Heart and all that good stuff, but I didn't get in as much as the rest of them did. never really thought of myself as being anything special. You know, I just did what I was supposed to do. Then in Tet, 1968, was the closest I've gotten to dying, I think, than ever before. Which is what caused a lot of pain in my life, I think. Just one battle is all it took, but it was a battle that lasted for a month, so we just squeezed it all in a short period of time. But
so you were sent up to Ray?
I was sent away. Our rear base was right there in Da Nang, but then from Da Nang they sent me to Hue, and we had security detachments in Hue, Quang Tri, Dong Ha. There was a lot of different areas that we went to, and each one had their own attachment of Marines for security. Again, I don't know why we had to guard the Army, but you know, someone thought it made sense. So, and to be honest with you, after Tet, the Army guys were glad we were there. So there was no. Everybody says the Army, Marine Corps is the best, the Army or whatever. When it comes down to brass tacks, they're all the same. A guy's going to do what a guy has to do, and it really doesn't matter. Even though I have to admit, I would go, if I went to combat again, it would be with the Marine Corps. I knew I wouldn't be left behind, and everybody would have your back. But I remember not waking up, getting out, having the sun come up the first day after the major attack, the first attack, and looking down all the streets from the compound, and there were little NBA flags flying on all the houses, all the way around the compound. And some big NBA flags flying to some of the other that you could see the flagpoles from. And that's when we realized that we may be into a little bit of trouble.
So when did you arrive in Hue or in country?
1966. No, 67. I turned 18 June the 16th. June the 26th, I was sitting in Vietnam. So, and then after I got to Da Nang, I think I spent 2 days in Da Nang, and then they sent me to Hue. And they could have sent me south or north or whatever, and just Hue is where I was sent. And but even though I was stationed in Hue, we went to like Quang Tri, we went there sometimes, and we ran convoys from Da Nang that's what they would use to get us back sometimes, instead of flying us back on helicopters and stuff. We would be protection for the convoy going, and which was, that's where I was exposed to Agent Orange. So, one of the places.